Hey friends, welcome back to Two Bears Homestead. Today, in yet another canning video, we are going to can up some meatballs. The reason I chose to do this today is it's definitely an experiment for me. It's not something that I have normally done. I've never really canned hamburger meat or chopped meat if you're from New York and New Jersey. I've never done that. So I did some research on how to do it the correct way. And then there's a lot of people out there doing it the incorrect way, just based on my knowledge of canning and the science behind it. So I had defrosted the hamburger meat, for dinner a few days ago, and I just got pushed to the back because something came up. We wound up having something else, and so I need to use this up because I can't put it back in the freezer. So I'm going to go ahead and make this like filler-less meatball. So, the Italian in me, because I am part Italian, we make our meatballs, there's all sorts of stuff in it, and there's bread, bread, milk, fillers, egg for binders, tomato sauce, all that stuff. So, can't really do all that. You could get away with tomato sauce, I think, but definitely not the egg, definitely not the bread, and all that stuff. So basically, it's going to be just a meatball seasoned with herbs. Now, you can season the meatballs with fresh vegetables, like you can use, you grate up your onions in it, stuff like that. All that is perfectly acceptable because you're going to throw them in the oven and cook them anyway. So I figured I'm going to try, I think it was Sutton Days that, canned her meatball. So I was like, I'm going to do it her way. And, it's not her recipe, I'm, embellishing it a little bit, but I'm going to do it her way because that seems to be kind of how I understand the canning of the meatballs. So pretty much what we're doing. So we have the meat ready to go. I have over here all my spices that I'll go over in a second. And on the stove behind me is a saucepan with, or a mini stock pot, whatever you want to call it, with, I took my beef bone broth and I seasoned it up and flavored it so it's like table ready. So I am salting the meat a little bit, and I salted the broth a little bit because I don't want to over salt anything because it'll just go crazy in the canner, for lack of a better word. And everything I'm using is in the meatballs themselves are dry spices or freeze dried. Now when you obviously it's just like canning any other meat, meat in the jar, liquid. So what I am going to do when I can a dough is, put the meatballs in the jar and then go ahead and add some fresh onion to the jar and then liquid, because that is acceptable in the canning guidelines. And then, I'm doing this in pints, so it will be 75 minutes, but I'll probably just go ahead and do it for the 90 minutes. I'll make that decision when the time comes, I guess. I don't know how much this is going to yield, so I don't have my canner out yet. So it could be my electric, electric tabletop canner, or it could be the big canner on the stove. I just don't know how many jars I'm going to get, so I'll just wait until that point. After they come out of the oven, I'll measure out the meatballs and take it from there. So here, this is about 2 pounds of meat. I think it's like 1 point something, but it's just about 2 pounds of meat. It was 2 different packages, so I kind of went through and I just kind of mixed them together a little bit because I think one was a higher fat content than the other one. So I just mix the meats together. So in this, this is strictly a dry mix. So I have here is about a half a cup of oyster mushrooms. I ran them through the blender and powdered them. And that is from my dehydrated oyster mushrooms. So that'll go in. And that is about a half a cup. Might actually be slightly more. Might actually be more than I need for this little bit of meat. But yeah, let's leave that little bit out. And then on top of that is just a little bit more than a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And just a scant tablespoon of garlic powder. And then about a little less than a teaspoon each of salt and pepper. And then about a half a cup of dried onions. And that's pretty much all I'm putting in these. All the flavors that I like. And that's all there is, that's all I'm putting in it, is literally just the onion, the garlic, salt and pepper, a little bit of Italian seasoning, and of course the mushroom. That's it, my friends. So now really the only thing to do now is just roll the balls up. So I use, this is a, what do they call it? It is a 1.5 tablespoon measure. I think I might have got this at like that store we all know and love, Bed Bath & Beyond. Then I literally just take the, just scoop a ball, roll them up. They're not going to stay together perfectly. What I like about using the scoop is I like this because it keeps everything uniform size. The one thing I prefer in my canning is the uniform size of things, because I can guarantee that the appropriate temperature or the heat transfer happens all the way through the jars. So that's me, that's what I do. Okay, so here we are. That batch actually gave me one tray. It was actually perfect. And, watch out, dog. Watch out, girl. These are going right in the oven. I have the oven at 375, so it should take about 20 minutes, maybe a half hour. We'll see. I use a thermometer to check my meat, and I always get the meatballs to a minimum of 155 degrees. 165 is probably safer because it is a hamburger meat product, but it's also going to cook in the jars a little bit. So I'm going to go for like the 150 to 155, and that's it. So let's clean up this mess, and I will see you when they come out of the oven. So what I'm going to do right now, these are out of the oven. They temp at 160, so that's a little warmer than I wanted, but it's fine. Is I'm getting them right off this pan because of the grease and the oil. So I want to minimize that going into the jars. But what I do want is all of this brown goodness. I want to get some of that. So I am going to go ahead and just pour off the grease. Just put a little of the stock on there. And just kind of deglaze it a little bit. I'm not going for everything. I could, but there's some good flavor in that, so I'm going to rescue that flavor. That's good enough. So now this is me being a little fussy, is I am going to run this through a gravy pot. Just going to let that separate a little bit so I can just get some more of the oils off of there, and then I'll feel more comfortable about canning it. Okay, so the oven is off. Here are the meatballs that are out of the oven. I tasted one. They taste pretty good, actually. So I'm going to go ahead. The oven is off, but I let it vent a little bit. The oven's still warm. I want to keep the meatballs warm. And then I'm going to go ahead and set up my canner. Okay, so I have my electric canner set up. I'm going to actually get 2 quarts and 1 pint out of those meatballs, so that's going to work out really well. And then I have a 4th jar in there. If I have any leftover broth, I'll just can that again, or I'll just put water in there. But you need to have a full canner. So 2 quarts, 1 pint, and then the meatballs are down in the oven. Let's go ahead and let's get this canned up. So each jar is getting about 15 meatballs, and for the quarts, I'm going to put in just a 1/4 cup of diced onions. One-inch headspace, 1-inch headspace, 1-inch headspace. A jar of tap water, which I'm not going to save, and that will balance my canner out. All right, so the canner is balanced, the 2 quarts, and then the pint. So that one is the food and that one there is the water. So we are gonna go ahead. Canner is set, ready to go. Go ahead, lock the lid. Then we are going to be high, and then we're going 90 minutes. 91, because I always do one for good luck. Get it going, and then on the top, just gonna set it so it's venting, so it vents, so it exhausts, and we take it from there. The canner will do all the work. Okay, we are venting. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's venting right now, and we've got about 5 minutes left on the vent, so we're in good shape. The canner's doing its job. So about the meatballs, again, like I said earlier, it's just meat only, and the herbs and seasonings that you use. You cannot use any binders like bread soaked in milk, egg, any of that stuff. That's no-fly zone in the canning process for meatballs. Some people will say that, well, you're cooking them in the oven, so you're cooking, the egg, and no, it's just, there's really no way to safely can that product. So, those ingredients, I should say. So let's just leave that off the table. In my kitchen, we're leaving it off the table now. If you want to do it, it's your kitchen, your rules, just know that it's not safe. So I didn't add any fresh onion or stuff to the actual meatball itself, as you saw, because I just wanted to try this way first. This really is truly an experiment. And with the bone broth is I just took my bone broth that I made it before the holidays, and I went ahead and just seasoned it up with some onions, some celery, garlic, whatever I wanted, and it tastes pretty good. So the one thing you can't do is you can't use thickeners in the canning process. Now, But some people will say, and they swear by using cornstarch. That's absolutely a no-fly zone. Cornstarch tends to break down in the high heat anyway. And then the other thing is flour. You cannot use flour to thicken for canning as well. Some people say it's for the heat transfer. There's probably some credibility to that, but mainly it's because grains, flour, not grains, but wheat and rice have the potential to have a bacteria on it called Bacillus cereus, which is spelled C-E-R-E-U-S, and if that bacteria is present, it does not break down in canning, or it's not destroyed or denatured or whatever language you want to use. And so therefore in the canning process, if that bacteria is present, it will proliferate in the jars. So, that's one of the main reasons why those products are not approved. So, to my understanding, the Bacillus cereus needs to get to 251 or 252 degrees, which a home canner does not get to. It just doesn't. So, that's why these products are unsafe, especially rice. But we're not doing rice tonight. So there is an approved thickener that you can use, and it's called Clear Gel. And if you can use this, I've done some gravies with it. It's not really rebel canning, but I followed the approved recipes that I could find on that, and probably could thicken this and turn it into more of a stewed texture. But I didn't want to do that tonight because I really want to make sure I like the meatballs first. Now this Clear Gel is 1/4 cup to 1 quart of liquid, so it's pretty significant. And if I remember from when I made apples one time, or apple pie filling, it got really, really, really thick. So I don't know that I would want it that thick. I would rather thicken it at the pot after I open the jar up. So that's kind of it. So we are letting the canner go. If you have any comments or feedback or suggestions or ideas, any of that fun stuff, please politely leave a comment below. And it smells amazing. So I am going to let the canner do its thing, and I'm going to say adios for now. Again, leave those comments below, hit the like and subscribe button, and stay tuned for part 2 where I get Rob and we do a taste test on this video. See you on the next one, my friends.